deep in the heart of wild Africa, where the laws of survival are written in blood and brutality. There once existed a legend that made the entire natural world shudder at its very mention. It is not merely a story of strength, but a tragic epic of rise and fall, of a brotherhood bound by flesh and blood, and of the mad ambitions that led to ultimate destruction. Imagine a dark force rising from the thickets, 6 giants sharing the same bloodline, 6 warriors who knew no fear, tearing apart the peaceful skies of the Sabi sand region together. They were the most ruthless rulers, uncrowded kings who turned a vast savanna into a stage for their reign of terror. It is said that, during their era, the African earth never ran dry, for the blood of their enemies flowed ceaselessly. More than 100 other lions fell beneath their fangs and claws. A horrifying number unprecedented in history, enough to dye the dry riverbeds red. But as they say, he who holds absolute power is essentially dancing with death. And even the proudest kings cannot escape the scythe of fate. This is the story of the Mapogo coalition. Those who rewrote every rule of the jungle, only to eventually pay the ultimate price for their own throne. Let your mind drift to the land of Sabi sand, a precious gem lying right on the doorstep of the colossal Kruger National Park. Here, life and death are interwoven in every breath. With abundant food sources, this is a paradise for hunters, and a graveyard for the weak. It was right here, under the close watch of camera lenses for decades, that the seeds of a legend began to sprout. We are speaking of the Sparta Lion Pride, one of the most ancient and powerful lineages in this land. Around the early 2000s, specifically in 2002, destiny sowed 10 little lives into this clan, 5 of which were male cubs. At that time, they were just clumsy balls of fluff, nameless, without sharp claws, but deep within those innocent eyes burned the fire of future conquerors. Later, the world would know them by haunting names: Scar, Pretty Boy, Rasta, Kinky Tail, and Mr. T. But that is a story for later. Right now, the picture of the Mapogo legend is still missing its most important piece. A piece that destiny would soon deliver in the strangest of ways. As these cubs grew, differences began to emerge. While their sisters appeared shy and cautious, these 5 brothers carried within them a curiosity and recklessness bordering on madness. Specifically, among the 5 brothers, there were 2 individuals who stood completely apart from the rest, forming an inseparable duo from a very young age. One bore the bearing of a born leader. The other was a strictly loyal shadow. They were Mr. T and Kinky Tail. There was an invisible current connecting these two, a brotherhood that was both intense and peculiar. People still tell the story of when the entire Sparta Pride was feasting on the carcass of a giant buffalo. According to the unwritten laws of lions, the dominant males, their fathers, are always the ones to eat first. No one, not the lionesses nor the cubs, is allowed to approach until the kings have had their fill. Yet, Mr. T, who was then just a toddler who could barely walk steadily, did something that left the whole pride stunned. He wobbled over, sticking his head right under the blood-soaked jaws of a growling father to snatch a piece of meat. An act considered suicidal. Usually, a single swat from a full-grown male is enough to send a cub to the other side. But strangely, that stubbornness, bordering on arrogance, from Mr. T signaled a tyrant's nature in the making. Those lucky enough to witness that moment understood that if these children survived to adulthood, they would become true nightmares of the Sabi sand. The harsh reality of nature is that only 1 in 8 lion cubs survives to adulthood. But luckily for the Mapogo brothers, they were born into a thriving dynasty. They had food every day and, more importantly, they were protected by a coalition of magnificent fathers, the West Street males. Unlike the stereotype that male lions are lazy kings who only sleep all day, the West Street fathers were dedicated warriors. They not only governed the Sparta Pride but also dominated many other prides in the vicinity, creating a territory of absolute safety for their offspring to grow. Watching how these giant males cuddled and groomed their cubs, one could see the unexpectedly tender side of these jungle assassins. If there were a definition of fatherly love in the animal kingdom, they were its living monuments. Their responsibilities were incredibly heavy, protecting the borders, driving out invaders, and taking down colossal prey that the strength of lionesses could not handle. to feed a large family with 10 growing mouths like the Sparta Pride. Small prey like impala was not enough. Their targets were the giants, giraffes, buffalo, hippos. Look at the scene of the entire family taking down a full-grown giraffe together. It is a dance of death that is both terrifying and mesmerizing. The lionesses open the act with agility and speed. They cling to the legs and hindquarters of the prey, trying to unbalance the moving tower. But a giraffe's kick is a lethal weapon, capable of shattering the skull of anyone careless. When the battle reaches a stalemate, that is when the West Street males enter the fray. With rippling muscular strength and superior weight, they charge in like tanks, dragging the prey to the ground. Roars, blinding dust, and finally silence as life is extinguished. A lavish feast lasting several days is the worthy reward for that recklessness. But life on the savanna is never a smooth, straight line. Even when carefully protected, death always lurks in every corner. In 2003, when our young princes were over 6 months old, they began learning to hunt. First lessons always come with naivety and mistakes. Instead of targeting prey within their means, they teased opponents they shouldn't touch, like honey badgers or porcupines. But the real test, the test that decides the fate of a lion, is the buffalo. The African buffalo are not gentle, grass-grazing creatures. They're living armored vehicles, weighing nearly a ton, aggressive and extremely united. Their horns are sharp bayonets ready to gut any enemy. Facing one buffalo is hard. Facing a herd of thousands is a nightmare. There was a time when the Sparta mothers were stalking a large herd of buffalo. The curious Mapogo children followed too closely. The tide suddenly turned. Instead of fleeing, the buffalo detected the lions and decided to counterattack. The bellow of the lead buffalo rang out like a war horn. 1,000 buffalo turned their heads, charging straight toward the lions like a pitch-black flood. The experienced adults quickly scattered and retreated, but the children did not. They were trapped. Mr. T and Kinky Tail, those who were always at the front, suddenly found themselves lost amidst a forest of legs and sharp horns. When buffalo catch a lion cub, they don't just kill, they trample, toss, and maul until the carcass is unrecognizable. That is the revenge of the herbivores. The entire Sparta Pride stood watching from afar in despair. But a miracle happened. Through incredible agility and unbelievable luck, Mr. T and Kinky Tail escaped death by a hair's breadth, dragging themselves back to the family with wounds they would remember for a lifetime. If on that day, the hooves of the Grim Reaper had been one beat faster, the history of Sabi sand would have turned in a different direction, and the name Mapogo would have sunk into oblivion forever. That miraculous survival was like an affirmation. Fate had chosen them for greater things. Time passed, wounds healed, and the 5 brothers continued to grow. But another major turning point struck in 2003, an event that completely changed the landscape of this coalition. An intruder appeared. A young, wandering, solitary male lion entered Sparta territory. Typically, the script would be a bloody battle, and the intruder would be torn apart or chased down by the West Street males to protect their bloodline. But something strange, almost to the point of being unbelievable, occurred. Silence. There was no battle. The West Street males, those ferocious kings, accepted this stranger. That new lion was named Makulu. He was larger and slightly older than the Mapogo kids. Many theories suggest that Makulu might have been an illegitimate son of one of the West Street males with another pride. So they recognized the scent of their kin. Whatever the reason, Makulu quickly integrated and became the eldest brother, the 6th piece completing the legendary lineup. Makulu's arrival was like giving wings to a tiger. If Mr. T was aggression, Kinky Tail was recklessness, then Makulu brought superior physical strength and the composure of a seasoned leader. The year 2004 marked a painful but necessary turning point. The laws of nature have no room for sentimental pity. When sons begin to mature, when testosterone starts flowing in their veins, fathers will view them as potential threats. The West Street Coalition began to drive away the very children they once loved. It was a brutal separation. 6 brothers, Scar, Pretty Boy, Rasta, Kinky Tail, Mr. T and Makulu, were cast out of paradise, becoming nomads with no home, no territory, and no protection. The life of a nomadic lion is hell on earth. They must wander through strange lands, always living in fear of being killed by resident males. They have no lionesses to hunt for them. They must learn to survive on their own. In the early days, the 6 brothers were a disaster in the art of hunting. They were clumsy, noisy, and uncoordinated. Gnawing hunger drove them to desperation. They tried to steal kills from other lionesses, only to be chased half to death by the resident males. There were times when death was so close it seemed the coalition would disintegrate. Hunger, disease, and untreated wounds. But it was in that very crucible that their killer instincts were awakened. They understood that to survive, they must unite, and to rule, they must be ruthless. Gradually, failures turned into lessons learned in blood. They began to know how to coordinate. Makulu, with his colossal stature, acted as the pillar. The coordinator, Kinky Tail, the craziest one, was always the spearhead charging into the prey first, defying danger. And Mr. T, with his innate brutality, was the one to deliver the final finishing blow. Their targets shifted from small prey to the giants. Buffalo. Hunting buffalo requires perfect coordination and absolute muscular strength. When 6 male lions charge a buffalo together, it is a scene of destruction. They tore apart their prey with frenzied hunger. Their strength increased day by day, along with their manes beginning to grow thick and jet black, symbols of maturity and abundant testosterone. Within the coalition, an unspoken order was also established. Although Mr. T always appeared aggressive, bullied his brothers, and always wanted to rise to be the leader, in front of Makulu, he still had to show some deference. Makulu, with his thick black mane and massive physique, remained the unofficial king of the group. But Mr. T's ambition was never extinguished, it just smoldered, waiting for the right moment. The relationship between the members was both a brotherhood of life and death and a fierce underlying rivalry. But it was precisely that competition that created the terrifying synergistic power of the Mapogos. After many months of wandering, enduring hunger and humiliation, the 6 brothers had now transformed. They were no longer skinny, fearful nomads. They had become perfect killing machines. Their eyes no longer held innocence, but contained the coldness of the Grim Reaper. Rippling muscles beneath scar-covered skin were proof of hundreds of life and death battles. They began to realize the power of numbers. No single lion or coalition of 2 or 3 could stand against the might of 6 giants simultaneously. Now, they stood on the threshold of history. Ahead were lush territories, where prides of lionesses needed rulers and aging males were guarding their thrones. The 6 Mapogo brothers, with Sparta blood coursing through them and forged in hell, were ready to reclaim what belonged to them. A storm was about to break over Sabi sand. A bloody purge was about to begin. They would not just defeat the enemy, they would exterminate them by the roots. Kill every male standing in their way, and slaughter the cubs to assert their lineage. This was no longer a battle for survival, this was a war for absolute dominion. What we have witnessed is merely the gentle prelude to a symphony of blood and tears. Sabi sand is holding its breath. The old lions are beginning to feel the unease in the wind. A new era is about to dawn. The era of the Mapogos, where mercy is a luxury, and violence is the only language spoken. Brace yourselves, for the next pages of history will be written not in ink, but in the blood of fallen kings and the roars of the 6 legendary brothers echoing through the heavens and earth. Darkness has descended upon the savanna, and the monsters have truly awakened. The story of that brutal rise will continue, taking us from one astonishment to another horror, proving a cruel truth of nature: only the strongest have the right to survive.